Hello, my name is John Reynolds. On this episode of Extraordinary Life Stories, I'm talking to visionary entrepreneur Jim Mellon. Jim is a billionaire consistently in the top 10% Times Rich list, investor and philanthropist, and best-selling author. Jim's superpower is identifying emerging global trends. This famously was epitomised with his prediction of the 2008 credit crunch in one of his books, Wake Up. Jim is the founder of Juvenescence, inspired by the possibility and advances being made in the area of longevity. I want to know the why behind Jim's desire to alter our age expectancy from birth to well over 100 years old, and indeed how he's going to do this. This is going to be a fascinating conversation. I can't wait to talk with Jim. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, John.
Tell me, who is Jim Mellon?
Sitting right before you, I am trying in my own little way to do things that will have an impact on the world and at the same time make money for our investors, which includes myself, obviously. And but I started in a different place, as we all do.
Well, take me back to a young Jim growing up. What did you want to be?
My father was a diplomat for the UK, and we travel around the world. And when I left university a long time ago, the first thing I wanted to do was to leave the country because I had the nomadic instinct. So I went to Hong Kong, where I got a job with a company called GT Management, which is still going. It's now owned by Liechtenstein, so it's called LGT. And they quickly sent me from Hong Kong to San Francisco. So for the first 4 years of my career, I honestly, at close range, saw the blooming of people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, the founder of Compaq Computer. I had a ringside seat. If only I'd known that I was very lucky then, I would have made more of it. But I had a ringside seat, and it was a great time to be in San Francisco at that time.
Yeah.
Because technology was really coming to the fore. And then I went back to Asia, and I became I was the owner of a fund management company, which was pretty successful in emerging markets.
Yeah.
Of all types.
Yeah.
So we went all the way from China to Russia, and we were one of the largest emerging market managers. The company still exists today. And then I got into biotech and then into food and the science of longevity, which is both related to biotech.
Yes. The science of longevity fascinates me, particularly with what you're doing. Talk to me in layman's terms about what you're doing, because in the chat we had before this program, I think you mentioned in 20 years' time from birth, the age expectancy could be 110. That's legacy changing. That's huge. How are you going about this?
Well, I'm sure you know this, but let me remind you that the oldest person ever to have been alive and to be documented as alive is Jeanne Calment, who was a French woman who died at the age of 122 in the 1990s. All these old people are asked, what's the secret of your longevity? And they always have an answer like, I drink or I don't drink, I smoke, I don't smoke. In her case, it was she avoided men. And she said that was the reason she lived so young. There may be something to it. Anyway, she lived a very long life. But she is regarded as being at the maximal end of human life expectancy. So if you, which you probably do, go to the gym every day, you do cryogenics, you look after your intake of food, and you don't drink too much, you don't smoke, etc., your maximum life expectancy is 110 to 120. So if I say that people will be born and their average life expectancy will be 110, that's not such a stretch, because we can live to 110. There are quite a lot of people who are alive at 110, and there are lots and lots of people who are alive at 100 plus these days.
Mm-hmm.
But all those gains in life expectancy, I mean, I'll ask you a question actually, John. What do you think the life expectancy in the UK was in the year 1900?
1900? 35?
No, it was 47. But one of the main reasons why people didn't mostly die at 47, they either died at the age of 1 or 60 something. Okay.
Yeah.
So infant mortality was a big deal. Now it's not a big deal. And the environmental factors have improved. So sanitation is better, food is, we might not think it, but it is generally better. There's more food, less accidents at work. There are vaccinations. So there's disinfectants and anesthetics, etc., etc. So those environmental factors mean that if we took someone from 1900 and put them in today's environment, they would live just as long as you and me. In other words, there's no biological drift. There's nothing that has enabled the human population to go from a 47-year-old life expectancy in 1900 to 85 today. That's biological. So what we're trying to do is to change fundamental biology. And we know that there are pathways of aging. Aging is not predetermined in the sense that you're going to live to 102 and that's written in stone. There are various pathways that get discombobulated as you get older, and you lose what's called homeostasis, which is stability and balance. Okay. And whatever you do, even if you lock yourself in a room and you never expose yourself to the sun, do anything that's damaging to your body, there's nothing you can do to avoid that. But we don't know exactly why those pathways interact in the way they do, but we know that they are malleable, so you can change them. It's been demonstrated in animals and in human beings that you can change some of these aging pathways, of which more and more are being discovered, to enable longer and healthier life. So what we want to do is two things: keep people alive for longer and healthier, but most importantly, keep them alive in a healthier state, so that the last 10 years of your life aren't characterized by serious illness, decrepitude, etc.
That's what I was going to bring up, because the idea of living to 110 but having 20 years with a Zimmer frame and not being able to move isn't particularly encouraging, whereas you're saying it's not just the age expectancy but actually really living up to a much older age, that's compelling.
Absolutely right. And it's not just because that's a nice thing for you and me. I unfortunately lost my father this summer. He was 94 and a half, and he was fine until the last 3 or 4 months of his life. But then you just the sudden deterioration. And 94 and a half is okay, but I hope I'm going to live, and I know that you will live longer than that. But this is not just because it's nice for us, our families, and the people we know. It's because it's the societal imperative. People are not having children, or they're not having enough children to replace the population. So we think, all of us are conditioned, you and me, by history to think that the population of the world is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it still is. But in many countries, the population is shrinking. And what we're going to end up with by the year 2100 or even sooner is a whole load of old people who won't be necessarily in great health and almost no young people to look after them. And let me put this in perspective. The G7, the top developed countries in the world, of which we are still one, by 2070, which seems like a long way off, but it's not that far off, half of the population of the G7 will be over 65 by the year 2070. No matter what happens, no matter if everyone goes out and have babies all day long from now on. It's a fact. So we can't afford not to have a healthier, older population. So we have to do something about prolonging the health span of human beings, or there'll be a societal collapse.
Because they're relying on the young generation to be the workforce to prop up.
Because there is no young generation. So in order to replace the population of the world, every woman has to have 2.1 babies. In Japan, it's 1.2. In China, it's slightly above 1.2. Here in the UK, it's about 1.7. So every single major developed economy is shrinking in terms of its population. In Japan, there's 125 million people today. How many do you think there will be by 2100?
No idea.
50.
Gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
How many people in Singapore will there be by 2100? 1/3 of the current population of 8 million people. 1/3. So this is a societal crisis that, because politicians think in very short intervals, they're not thinking about this as being a really important thing. So of all the biotech research, less than 1% goes into extending life or improving life in the later part of life. They're all going to curing diseases. All the money's going to curing diseases, which is that whack-a-mole strategy. So I'll cure diabetes here, but then I'll get cancer here, and that's not the solution. We need a holistic solution. So we're working on that. So we've had quite a lot of success in biotech. Our most recent biotech company was sold, our most recent biotech asset rather, was sold last year for $12 billion to Pfizer. and we developed that. We started that company 8 years ago, and then we decided to get into this longevity science because we have, for the first time ever, the confluence of the science becoming much better and capable of doing things.
Yes.
And also the money coming into the sector. So
Yes.
Jeff Bezos has put $3 billion into a Cambridge, UK-based company called Altos Labs. Yeah. There are other rich people who want to live forever who are also putting money in, but we're doing it out of an understanding that we need to improve health span. So people will not be able to retire at 65, 67, 68. Everyone should get used to potentially working until they're 85 or 90. In order to do that, as you said, they can't be using Zimmer frames. They've got to be working healthily. They may be doing different work, but they've got to be able to walk up and down the street. They can't be sitting in a chair all day long.
So your main why behind this is literally to solve a global problem, rather than what people could associate as Jim Mellon wanting to live forever sort of thing. It's nothing personal at all. It's a researched, fact-based, major global issue, and you've just dialed in and researched to try and solve it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, our lead program is in, so our drug that I told you about that we sold at the end of last year is for migraine, which is a terrible condition. It mostly affects women. It's a terrible thing. And now we have the best-selling, or Pfizer now has the best-selling migraine drug in the world. But there's a much bigger problem related to the central nervous system, which of course is dementia. And so if you're over 85, you've got a 50% chance of getting some form of dementia. Right. And we all want to not think about it, all right? All of us. We don't want to think, oh, I forgot, where I put the keys. Is that the first sign of dementia? We're kind of like shoving it out of our minds because we see how horrible it is.
It's when parents don't recognise their own children and stuff. It's
exactly,
just awful,
John.
isn't it?
Yeah. So we've come across this thing, which is a protein that is in every single cell of your body, but particularly in the neuronal cells. Mm-hmm. And in people who have Alzheimer's, they have a very low level of this protein, and people who don't have Alzheimer's have high and continuing levels of this protein, which is called plasmalogen. Mm-hmm. And we've worked out a way in which we can rejuvenate the cells using plasmalogens to stop people from, or at least potentially stop people from getting Alzheimer's. So have you had a 23andMe test done, or
No, I
Ancestry.com?
No.
So there is a gene called APOE4, a variant.
Okay.
And if you have that gene, your chance of getting Alzheimer's is 10 times greater than regular people who don't have that variation. At the moment, you can't do anything about it. But let's say that you knew that you had this variant, then you start taking the plasmalogens in order to stop you from getting Alzheimer's, and stop you it will.
Yeah.
And but for people generally, in the general population, this is a drug that potentially they could take every single day for the rest of their lives and not get Alzheimer's. That's something that I would do.
Yeah.
Because Alzheimer's, is, I think there's some great new drugs out there.
Yeah.
Including the anti-obesity drugs, which are just amazing. But Alzheimer's is the one thing that, like death, we don't want to think about, but we should think about it.
You have to embrace it. We're all going to have it happen, and it's how we can eliminate some of these things, particularly something as awful for those around those people that get dementia. It's only a good thing. I feel like if we sort of cut your head open and the brain was opened up, your brain would be so full of information.
I thought you were going to
How
say
do you
so
go
full
about
of
your
Alzheimer's.
research? No, not at all. You just exude knowledge. How do you research? How do you absorb so much information to then be able to put that into clearly, really well thought out and ultimately successful, businesses?
Well, it's partnership. Okay, so I've never been able to work on my own. I always work with other people. And I think some people are very good at working on their own. Richard Branson, for instance, I think he's a sole operator, really. But I work with other people and always have done. And so we try and bring the best.
The right people in, though. I mean, that's a skill in itself.
Well, sometimes they bring me in, so that's their skill, right?
Yeah.
And well, it might be their skill, but I think that it's partly a function of time. We all need to build our networks. We all need to read. We all need to understand what we're good at and what we're not good at. And reading is very important to me. So, for instance, this morning on the train from Brussels to come here, I read, but I read in a very, very fast way. So, because I now know how to triage what's good and what's relevant, what's not relevant. That takes time. It's not something you can just learn
yourself to do that.
I've trained myself to do it. And and that gives me, an insight into things that perhaps other people aren't picking up on, or I can be fast onto the bandwagon, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
But we are living in both a difficult and a wonderful world. Difficult because of all the reasons that we see in the newspapers right now, but wonderful in terms of the opportunity. And one of the reasons, selfishly, that I would like to live a long life, and you would like to live a long life, because we can see that things are going to be so different in 20 or 30 years' time. I mean, do you remember the dawn of the internet and the beeping sound? And we didn't know what it was for. We didn't realize that today, what we're going to do without the internet. Almost everything is driven by the internet. That's only in the last, should we say, 25 years that's become absolutely, maybe 30 at a stretch. But that's the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Everything that we're seeing today, ranging from AI to quantum to nuclear fusion to longevity to the new food systems, etc., will happen even faster than the internet became vital to all of our beings and our systems, basically.
Game changer. I mean, AI is an instrument, and I was just listening to you when you're talking about the aging population, and the fact that a fewer amount of people have got to support a huge amount of people. Can AI help with that? Because AI is going to be replacing jobs. It's already doing that. It's changing in a way that we'll only find out over the next few years, but very quickly. A lot of people are scared of it. A lot of people are embracing it. Ultimately, it's here. What's your journey with AI, and how are you using that to, basically bolster everything you're working on?
From a biotech point of view, AI is very helpful in discovering new drugs because it shortens the process of finding molecules that are appropriate. So that's a practical application that's useful for what I do. From our point of view, you and I can see that it's going to be really important to us, even if we're trying to get a succinct summary of information. Using ChatGPT, we can get it very quickly. And now ChatGPT is not time dated. So as you know, until quite recently, it was 2021 information only up to 2021 that you could use. So I think it will be of increasing relevance, but let's not make that the most important thing. I think the most important thing for us is that it enables things to go faster in almost every industry, but the new industries, I think, like fusion, which the UK is the leader in, quantum, which the UK is the leader in, food systems, are going to be much bigger than AI.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting. I want to talk about yourself. You're at the heart of so much information that you're either reading, researching, or getting back from all the different businesses. There's so many different ways of looking after ourselves, both physically and mentally. How do you look after yourself, and what keeps you kind of fit in the mind, and what do you do physically?
Well, I used to be a marathon runner,
okay,
and I've done 43 marathons, including 7 times here in London.
That's awesome.
But I figured that, two things. First of all, I noticed that my dad, who started running when he was 60, his main ailment as he got older was problems with his joints and lack of mobility. That was from doing full marathons, and he did as many as I did. So I decided to cut that back. So I go for light jogs, but more importantly, I always walk 15,000 plus steps a day. I think that's really important. Walking is really important for you. Eating healthily, which we do and we don't, like everyone really, depending on whether you're traveling or not.
Yeah.
Not smoking, not taking drugs. I think those are the important things, really.
So you don't have the kind of classic morning routine. I mean, you've probably got a very varied life, a lot of traveling and so on, but you haven't got that kind of, I do my breathing exercises or anything you swear by.
Well, I get up really early, so I get up between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning every day.
Yeah.
And I'm normally, if we're in London, I'll go for a walk. But no, I don't have any. I'm much keener to get on with work than to
I can tell.
spend my time breathing or whatever. And I think it's all very useful and relevant for some people, but for me, I would just kind of be laughing at myself if I did it.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you what, it's very evident from sitting with you. There's a a twinkle in your eye. There's a real focus and purpose. And yet you're a billionaire. You could just be sitting on a beach under the parasol, which is what so many people seem to aspire to do and dream of. Is that purpose something that you ultimately know is sort of keeping you in that zone? And what makes you want to get out of bed in the morning and keep going?
It's a great question. I mean, I think none of us know if circumstances are going to change dramatically. So how do you know that whatever you've got in the bank or in shares or whatever today will still be here tomorrow? That's a possibility, right?
Sure.
So you still need to keep in the flow, because as I've noticed that with my friends who don't do anything, that once they're out of the flow, that's it. I mean, they can never get back in.
Yeah,
it's really
not
hard.
relevant anymore.
Not relevant. And their network goes, and then you say, well, maybe I'll go back to work. Well, who's going to have you, basically? So that's a problem. The second thing is it's really exciting to be working, and because we've been born into a world in which work is not conventional anymore. It doesn't have to be. You don't need to be sitting in the office from 8 till 6 at night.
Yeah.
You can be at home, or you can be in New York working in a WeWork or whatever it's called now. So this is an exciting world as far as I'm concerned. We can work like on the train this morning, 2 hours uninterrupted work. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So that didn't exist when I was starting out. You were confined to an office.
Yes.
The internet didn't exist. We had faxes, but do you know they still use faxes in Germany?
Really?
They do.
Why just Germany?
Because Germany is an analog economy in a digital world. It's got serious problems, and because most of my money is in Germany, it's not great for me, I don't think.
But you make it. I can just tell you make it your business to know as much as possible, so that you're so well equipped to make these decisions and where you invest, where you sort of.
I make
time.
many mistakes, though, John. Many mistakes, and
that's interesting, because a lot of people would associate you with success, Times Rich List, Pfizer exit. How would you define success sitting here now?
Well, when I was younger, it would have been, I had the best performing fund in the world, or for the US, or whatever it was. And I was, always liked to have some money in the bank. I never wanted to be without money. All right. So, but I didn't have the normal aspirations. That having been said, when I was 30 years old, I bought a house in Ibiza, which we still have. It's been extended, etc.
Yeah.
But I'm not interested in beaches. I'm not interested in the party scene. I don't know why I bought there. I don't know why. But you kind of end up getting stuck in the place that you've been in for so long. You said about aspirations, people would be on the beach. So I've never been interested in that. So why didn't I buy there? I've got no idea.
Yeah.
I was living in Hong Kong at the time, so maybe I just wanted somewhere that was in Europe and accessible from London. And so I tell my friends that I'm in the drug business, which I am, and I live in Ibiza, and they put two wondering why I'm not in prison.
That's not the Jim that's sitting in front of me.
No,
about to go to Pasha and party.
No, definitely not. No.
Out of interest, I mean, a big motivation for people to make money is to effectively think that's going to make them happy. I've been wondering. It feels like I know the answer sitting with you here now, but as a billionaire, are you happy?
Well, I'm restless, I think is the best way of putting it. You talked about routine. My routine is I get straight into it as soon as I get up, and that makes me happy.
Yeah.
I love the early morning more than any other time of the day. But of course, if you get up at 4:30, you've got to go to bed early. So, we're in bed at 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, which is fine if you get used to that routine. I think it's fundamentally better for your health to do that than to go to bed very late and wake up later the next morning. But yeah, I would say I'm happier now. I would like to live another 40 or 50 years. Yeah. So if I knew that was going to happen, then I'd be even happier.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. How important, on the basis of what you just said there, is legacy to you?
Not important at all.
Interesting, because you could have a huge impact on, ultimately longevity.
Yeah.
For the human race.
Oh, well, in terms of, once you're dead, right? So yeah. I'm not expecting...
So your personal legacy, you don't think about at all. You're just, focused on the mission
to make an impact now. So we established the Longevity Centre at Oxford, which is funded by me. We are doing quite a lot in food, which is super exciting, reinventing the food supply of the whole world. And we're both Davina and I are absolutely committed to reducing intensive farming to reduce cruelty to animals, which is a big passion of ours. So we don't eat meat, obviously, haven't for a long, long time.
No.
And we are absolutely determined that at the moment, 80 billion animals are killed every year for human consumption, 2 trillion fish. That represents a huge risk to human health because of antibiotics, hormones, and zoonotic disease. You know, the COVID-19 was a zoonotic disease. It was passed from an animal to humans. We want to reduce that. We also want to improve the environment. And one way of improving the environment is to reduce intensive farming, provide alternative but better sources of food.
Yeah, it's incredible. There's the longevity from humans' point of view, then there's the animal cruelty, and then that ultimately benefits climate change if that many animals ultimately could be replaced in terms of the proteins and the nutrients you get from not eating them. You're saying you'll actually be able to create that. And what an impact that will have. That will have a huge impact on both animal cruelty, reducing it, and climate change, which of course is real and would massively reduce it. Like, well, you're incredible to talk to, Jim.
Yeah,
I've loved talking to you. I've learned so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks very much. Thanks, John.